Today, we're going to talk through patch swapped cards once again. Some videos have done the rounds on Instagram and it's become front of mind. There's a few things I want to talk to here, why it's such a bad thing, why it's such a big deal, what manufacturers and graders could be doing better to protect you and me as customers. Then also who you can sort of look to in this hobby for guidance on how to spot some of this stuff, and then also some of these databases that can assist you with making sure you're not getting scammed. Now, this is the video in question from a guy called Chris Cards KC, as you can see over here. So I was on the card pawn page, and you can see here basically that he does a post talking about how it's so freaking easy to pull these cards out of Panini products and how they need to be using stronger adhesive. So he essentially uses a pair of pliers, pulls the patch out in a few seconds, then sticks it down. Now, you've often had people in the past saying patch swap cards can be quite complicated in terms of removing them, which is the case for some products, but obviously, as we're seeing here in this particular one, it's quite easy to sort of pull out. And he essentially talks to, in his post, that they need to be doing a heck of a lot better with stuff like this. Now, what's interesting is since Card Pawn have posted it, basically talking about the same topic and giving a shout out to the likes of Wax Museum Podcast and Tiffany Cards, who I'll talk to a little bit later, they've basically once again reiterated that these manufacturers, these individuals within this industry, these businesses need to be doing more to protect us as customers. What I found a little bit alarming was there's some posts in here basically saying what's the big deal because it's a non-player associated patch, it's not game use, who's it really hurting? I think that's a poor position and a very naive position to take in this instance because, you know, if it was to go to a grader and they were to spot that, they wouldn't grade it, right? Because it would be considered an altered card. People like what they like, and obviously, you know, playing around with this for your PC might be a fun thing to do, but it is considered altering the card, right? So it wouldn't pass, you know, a grading authentication. Now, in terms of what I touched on at the very start of this video, irrespective of what you think of this, manufacturers and graders need to be doing a heck of a lot better to protect customers. And now one of the things that was mentioned in Chris Card's original post was that maybe these manufacturers should be using stronger adhesive to make it harder to remove this sort of stuff. And I think, you know, that is a really good start, but they need to be doing, you know, a lot more than that. It has to be something that is tamper-proof in the sense that if you remove this patch, you know, it's going to be made note on that card that altering was done. And that might be something like those void stickers you're seeing that basically if you remove it, maybe it damages the card. Maybe it does something, you know, with acetate over the card. So it's, you know, hard to get into. And if you want to remove that acetate, it damages the surface of the card. They need to be doing more from a fraud protection perspective to make sure that people don't, you know, deceive customers, right? Because you see it happen a heck of a lot. This is not something that's, you know, a one-off occasion. You're seeing dozens of these pop up every week, if not more than that, right? It's quite a big bloody problem. Now, you know, some other things that these manufacturers should be doing that Coach Co actually spoke about on his Instagram video today, and is something that I've mentioned, you know, countless times on this channel over the last few years, is that these manufacturers need to be imaging these cards, having a visual database of these cards in their sets. Now, this might be difficult for them to do this for every patch-related product, but certainly for things like Flawless, Eminence, NT, some of these big-end cards, these high-end cards, Panini should be having a database that you can go on as a customer and say, okay, this is what this card looked like when it left the factory. And yes, this is something cumbersome for them to do as a business because they have to somehow scan every single card via photo and then put it somewhere and store it. But that sort of removes all risk, right? Because if you want to buy something, you want to buy a card, you check that database, hang on a minute, this card does not match that database, what the heck is going on? And yes, that sort of opens a can of worms in the sense that if Panini make a mistake and you've got a card that was genuine, but they've mapped it incorrectly in their database, then that sort of leaves you exposed. But something like that is a big opportunity for them to, you know, squash this completely. Like, it's almost an issue that shouldn't exist in the first place. If they did something like that, it'd be quite simple to work out what is patch swapped and what's not, right? And I think a lot of people have gone after Panini in these comments from what I've seen. But again, Topps is doing the same crap, right? It's not any harder to do this stuff on Topps product. So the same goes for them. If they want to be producing these things with all 4 licenses in the next 5 years, you know, have a database, have something that your customers can reference so they're not getting scammed. And I think the same thing goes for these graders, right? When they've essentially graded a card that is high end, they need to be imaging that and having some sort of database that's easy to access. Yes, their websites now have references. I think PSA do, BGS do, I think sometimes SGC definitely do in the last few years. Have something that your customers can easily access to spot whether or not something's happened post grading. Because then if you've got Panini, you know, having it in their database and you can check that and match it to your own card, or it's gone to a grader and you check your card in the database, hang on a minute, this rookie card that's 12 of 49, I'm checking PSA's database, hang on a minute, the patch looks different since it was graded by PSA, what the heck is going on? another pretty easy, thing for these businesses to be implementing to protect their customers. And it's one of those things that, exposes them financially a little bit, right? Because they have to put in more work to add a feature that's not currently there, right? But from my perspective, it's almost worth doing that. Yes, it's going to cost you more money to create the project in the first place, the managing of the process moving forward, dealing with customers asking questions about it, all that sort of thing. But the end goal is protecting your customers so much better than what you're currently doing right now. And I think it's really ignorant to not be doing that, right? And it's something that should be done, right? We need to be having things like a visual database. And I've also talked to this in the past very quickly for autographs as well. You see so often these manufacturers put the wrong sticker autos on the wrong cards. Having a database internally of what players and athletes, autos look like, make it pretty easy to spot when you're sticking it on somebody's card, right? They need to be doing a lot of stuff like this because it is quite simple. It's not that cost effective to implement for the most part, but you're protecting your customers wholeheartedly, right? Customers are not going to get burned like they are right now. And apologies for getting a bit excited because it's a very important topic for mine. But in terms of, who you can leverage for this, for support, right, for guidance, I've talked to them both many times on this channel in the past. It is Tiffany Cards and Wax Museum podcast. They both have a database for you to spot this sort of thing. And Tiffany Cards, we actually spoke about 2 days ago with this whole Steph Curry fake rookie issue, right? There's all these opportunities here for you to look at individual sports to see basically what has gone wrong. And if you click into the altered card database itself, again, you can sort of see some video links here. Breakout cards is another good one. Sports Card Radio have called things out as one of my videos, which is pretty cool to see. But you basically come into here for a sport, and sometimes it does take a while to load because there is, hundreds, if not thousands of cards in this database. But you basically come into here, do your Control F on what you're looking for and seeing what is the reason this card is in this database. And you can see some of this, patch swap stuff pretty quickly. Things like this are so invaluable, and they're doing a much needed service for this hobby off the back of, these manufacturers, off the back of these graders dropping the ball by not monitoring this stuff like they should be. It's a really piss poor effort from these manufacturers and from these graders because they're stuck in the mindset of 10, 15, 20 years ago where, who cares if you lost some money on a sports card because they're not worth that much, when in reality they're worth a heck of a lot more these days. So you can see here, you've got the reasons why it's in the database in the first place, who reported it, and some, photograph evidence, highlighting why it's in this database, which is really important. But another really good one that is out there is Wax Museum podcast, because for a bunch of very key rookies, and I've referenced this tracker many, many times as well, he essentially tracks, those rookies for every single one of those players. And you can see here that you've got Anthony Davis, immaculate RPA, his true RPA, which I think is the NT. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. You've got some there for Giannis, James Harden, Ja Morant, Kawhi Leonard, so on and so forth. And what happens more often than not, and he'll talk about this in his podcast and he'll talk about it on his YouTube channel, is that essentially when he sees a photo for these, he adds it to that database. People support him by populating this as well. But what you often find is sometimes, people do patch swaps on these cards and then he adds those into this database as well. So if you're curious and you're chasing some of these cards, you're going to see pretty quickly on here some hanky-panky going on. And I think a common one that we've seen patch swaps on, I think, are these KD examples. So I think both of these are 20 of 99. As you can see here, this is the original card, originally imaged from years ago, and this is the newer one. So it's an invaluable resource that you need to be using, especially if you want to be buying some of these expensive cards. And these guys don't get enough credit for what they're doing, right? The hobby is that. It's a hobby. And enthusiasts like the likes of Wax Museum Podcast, Tiffany Cards, Breakout Cards, Sports Card Radio, all these other guys are doing the Lord's work to basically protect us as customers, and we need to be using them a lot more. And the thing that I always say on this sort of stuff, right? You've got these enthusiasts, right, doing this stuff in their spare time. They've got their own jobs, their own lives, their own families that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. They find the time to do this to protect fellow collectors. Yet you've got these billion-dollar businesses that are printing things to death, charging you an arm and a leg, almost taking advantage of you as a customer, and they can't find the resources to implement something like this that would squash these issues completely. I cannot emphasize enough how good it would be if Panini and Topps had a visual database for their cards to protect customers. That resolves and removes all issues from a customer perspective. Yes, it does create new issues that I explained a little bit earlier, but that's the kind of thing we expect from these businesses within this industry. They need to be doing more, and this is something that's going to be a step in the right direction. Hopefully it's something that we see Fanatics implement, but I'm not going to hold my breath because these guys like to take the piss with your money, which is really disappointing, but it is what it is. So let me know your thoughts down below if I've missed anything. I did a live stream with Mike Geo from Sports Card Nonsense a little earlier today, so check out the interview on their channel. We jumped into a few topics, which is really, really good. I did a interview last night with Coach Co. You'll probably see that in a few weeks on his channel. So again, keep an eye out for that. Dan the Card Man's popping up everywhere. You'll get sick of my face pretty soon, guys. So I do apologize. But as always, like I said, share a comment down below. Give me a like and a follow if you did enjoy the video. If you didn't, let me know what you didn't like, and we can try and improve it moving forward. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.